The story starts off as we see a man fighting against some monsters. Lukas Trowman, who is being seen as lesser by these monsters since he is a human. But he manages to defeat them, and then another one appears, saying that his ego is quite extreme. Lukas calls it a demigod, the creature that controls this world. He is unable to do a thing to it, since it manages to seal him in eternal darkness before he could even prepare to fight it. As we see this happening, we are sent to the present day, where we see a kid being bullied. The bullies beat him up and then leave, while he is laying down thinking about how he wants to be strong, and we see Lukas sealed hearing his voice, but he thinks is just a hallucination, and then we start on chapter 2. We see the boy begging his father, who is a noble, to help him get stronger, as we see Lukas listening. But his father tells him to get out of his life, and that he dirties the family name, and before leaving, he tells him that he has never existed in his life. After this we see the boy with some pills thinking about suicide. Meanwhile, we see Lukas angry at the demigods. As he is shouting, the boy takes the pills and then he passes away, but then we see Lukas waking up as the boy. He instantly looks at the calendar and sees that 4,000 years have passed. We learn that the boy's name is Fry Blake, the world's weakest human, whose now body is owned by the world's strongest human. As we start on chapter 3. We see Lukas outside training, but he seems to have a big problem with Frey's weak body. The next morning after finishing his training he says that he had reached the level of 5-star. But then starts throwing up blood, and the pills the boy had swallowed. He then forces himself to vomit. We then go to the school, where we see the bullies David and Jack entering. They start talking about Fry and how David wants to beat him up again, but then Jack says that he saw him buy a lot of sleeping pills and says that he might have killed himself. They start laughing and then make a bet if he really had. We go back to Lukas and he had vomited all the pills. He goes to school and we see him eating like a caveman, since he hadn't had food for years. He then goes to his class, and there he is immediately greeted by the bullies, who make fun of him for not being able to kill himself, and then David tries to trip him. Jack then tells him to give him 10 lunch tickets. Lukas is surprised to why his body is shaking for no reason, and remembers who these kids are. Jack then tries to hit him, but Lukas simply dodges. He then tries to hit him again, but Lukas hits him, knocking him out. The teacher gets in, and when he checks on Jack, he is shocked at seeing what he called trace of martial skills used with mana, and says that no one in this school is capable of that, not even the professors. Another professor then continues with the class, saying that their professor left to check on Jack. But we soon learn that this guy is a creep, and he also seems to like to pick on Fry. He immediately goes up to him and tries to bully him. He asks where the boy has been and why he hasn't joined his class, and Lukas simply starts making excuses and making fun of the professor. He gets irritated and says that he will ask some questions, and if he fails to answer them he will have to take responsibility. The first question is to name 3 items that were used by the magic warrior King Kasajan. As soon as he says that name, Lukas gets excited to hear it. We then start on chapter 5, where we see a man training and destroying a mountain. After this, we see a young Lukas and we learn that the guy he is talking to is Kasajan. We then go back to the class where we see Lukas happy that his friend had become a famous hero. The kids seem angry at the teacher for asking this question, which they still haven't learned. So Isabel stands up and protests. The teacher then uses this to try and go after the girl, but as he is trying to pick on her, Lukas answers his question, and of course, he is correct. He then starts asking more questions as we start on chapter 6. We see the professor and all the students shocked as Lukas had answered all the professor's questions. Class ends and Lukas goes to eat, as we see Isabel following him. He tries to ignore her but can't. When they reach the dining room, she asks him how he knows so much about the light ages. He asks what that is, and she says is the times 4,000 years ago, and surprised at how he didn't know what it was called. And he then gets angry after he finds out that magecraft has regressed, instead of developing, and thinks that the demigod has something to do with it. She then names the 4 great mages who brighten magecraft. Kassajan, Schweitzer Wilsman, Iris Visfounder, and finally the man held as the strongest mage, Lukas Trowman. She then says that if he was still alive she would ask for his hand in marriage, and he bursts out laughing. He then says that he would never marry her, which makes her confused and blush. We then see David looking at them with an envious and annoyed look. She then asks him to teach her, but he ignores her, and tells her to read books. We start on chapter 7 where we see everyone outside in an arena, where they will be dueling, and they are only allowed to use 1-star magic. We then see Lukas, who finds Professor Jane attractive, which angers Isabel, saying that the teacher is 40 years old. Fry and David are then called to duel, but he ignores David, as he is trying to offend him, and goes to the teacher trying to flirt with her. She tries to take him off her, but then he tells her that if he wins she has to take him to dinner. She accepted and the match begins. David then tries to make fun of him, and then says that he will destroy his vocal cords and then destroy his limbs one by one, making it unable for Fry to give up. David then starts by creating a spear-looking thing. Meanwhile, Fry simply uses a magic missile which makes David laugh at first, till he gets hit with it. And this is where the 7th chapter ends. Hope you all enjoyed this recap. Make sure to leave a like, comment on what you think about it, and don't forget to subscribe, so I can make more recaps of movies, TV shows, animes, etc. See you all on the next video.